My name is Kathryn Desplanque. I'm an art history professor at UNC Chapel Hill, but I did my undergraduate degree in studio arts and fine arts. I ended up abandoning my art practice, not really on purpose, but I just kind of stopped making visual art for a really long time. But it came back to me during lockdown in the pandemic. Um, and it's been just this burst of creativity for, I guess we're going on 5 years now, which is really exciting. And I am curating a show at the Contemporary Art Museum of Raleigh called Neo Psychedelia. I'm working on it with their exhibitions curator and my friend Raj Bunag, who's also an amazing artist and a graduate from UNC's MFA program. The show's called Neo Psychedelia, and I've brought together 5 amazing artists who have let me exhibit with them, and I'm really happy. They're so good at what they do, and I look up to all of them. So it's been an amazing honor for them to say yes. Zach Storm, Chieko Murasugi, Tanya Sully Thornton, Charlie Dupuy, and Durston Crosby. And I'm working on work for that show. The venue is the by far most prestigious venue I've ever exhibited in, much less curated in. So we're all really intimidated by the venue, and we're all really kind of pulling a lot out of ourselves to try to make the best work we've made so far in our careers. And I'm really trying to kind of level up what I can do so that I don't embarrass everyone or myself, and trying to accept this challenge to move somewhere bigger in my art practice. Whatever bigger means, it doesn't necessarily have to mean size. So I'm working on this trio of works. The first is called Rift, the second is called Wrinkle, and the third is Void. And I've been working and planning all 3 of these since the beginning of 2023. And they started really kind of coming into fruition and manifesting physically in the world this spring. And I've been working on them this summer. But the one piece that's really been resisting me every single step of the way is Void, which we have here behind me. And I've been trying really hard to make it exist. And it's been a huge challenge. One of my kind of emerging life philosophies is if I'm being presented with too many challenges, I try to take the hint that maybe that's not the path I'm supposed to go down. Maybe things need to be a little bit different than what I originally thought they would be, and I want to be kind of flexible and adaptive to it. So normally if I'd been presented as many challenges as I have been with Void, I would have given it up. But for some reason with this, I really feel strongly compelled to actually make her come into existence and manifest. So I'm still working at it. Rift was the first piece I worked on, and I had this really set design for it, and worked with somebody at ShopBot, which is a local CNC workshop. They build their own CNC machines, and they do CNC work, and they provide CNC training. And a friend of a friend connected me to this wonderful person who has been working with me voluntarily to get these cut out and created. And I had the most planning for Rift, and we just went and we kind of executed. And I got to know the process through that and their use of the software Aspire, which talks to their shop bots and programs them. And so for Wrinkle, I let there be a little bit more space for us to discover serendipity and discover surprise. And so that piece is kind of manifested in that way. And so by the time I came to it with Void, I was really kind of loosey-goosey in my own way. I had a strong sense of how to game the accidents that could happen. So I sort of did that. And I knew that if I just created a really strange shape, that we could give it a really voluptuous topography, and that I couldn't predict the topography, but I wanted to see what would happen. So all I knew coming into planning Void at ShopBot was I made this shape in Illustrator that just had the wildest contours, just truly, truly strange. And it was really fun to create. And then I really like working on MDF because it's so flat and really sandable because it doesn't have a grain, really easy to work with. I've been working with it for a long time and I really like it. And I had 2 sheets of MDF that were the exact same size. So a friend of mine and I glued them together so that we would have more depth to work with in that typography. So apparently this is called laminating. I've been learning some words, laminating, which is just gluing 2 pieces of wood together, I believe. So I came in with these laminated sheets of MDF and this Illustrator file of a really strange series of 3 shapes. And my vision for it was that I really wanted to work on watercolor paper and on watercolor paper I wanted to paint in watercolor, and I wanted to draw in coloring pencils, and I wanted to work on black paper. And it was going to be my first time working on a black surface instead of a white surface. So I'd always kind of built these universes in white surfaces. And I was coming to blackness for the first time. And as a mixed black person, it just felt really essential for me to be like really intentional about what I wanted to do with blackness when I started working on it. And so I wanted to work on black paper, and we were going to build kind of these like, in a way, really elaborate frames that would also be like interacting with what I drew on the paper and would be a part of it. And when we started working on it in the Aspire program, the shapes that we ended up kind of randomly generating from these contours, the typography was just so wild and like kind of gross. Like it grossed me out and it was uncomfortable, and I loved it. I loved like being uncomfortable and grossed out by it. And I felt like I really like that kind of line between like approaching what scares us in some way. Usually it's just unfamiliar. Like that's it. There's really nothing else going on but unfamiliarity, and I wanted to kind of get to that edge. And I know that there are many different versions of that edge. There's like grotesque, there's fear, there's prejudice. There's so many different versions of that edge to get close to, and I wanted to move myself there, and I knew if I did, my audience would come there with me. So I really like the typography, and so I'm sitting there with the man I was working with at ShopBot and thinking like, well, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to rethink this whole piece because I love this typography so much. I don't want to leave holes in the middle so that these can be frames. So we didn't leave holes in the middle of these objects when we planned them out. And it was the 3rd and last piece we had to cut. He and I were both so in love with the shape that we set up a time for it to be cut out. And we were willing to just take as long as humanly possible to cut it out really well. So we planned like 16 hours. All of this just kind of came to the table suddenly for him, and he couldn't do it. And when I found out, I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to show Void. I'm only going to be able to show 2 of these 3 pieces. And I sort of sat with that for a few weeks. And later that day, the shooting at UNC happened, the first shooting, and there was just so much going on. So I sat with all of that for a couple of weeks and then realized like, no, it's really important to me to make sure I'm really showing up fully for this exhibition, and ended up working with the Be a Maker lab at UNC, which is for students and faculty and has just, you know, kind of every tool you could want. And they recently got a giant ShopBot machine, the same size as the one I've been working on. And so I've been working with Joel there, who's been willing to kind of use this as an opportunity to attract students to the shop bot, right? Because they're seeing this weird thing being made and, you know, getting curious about getting training on it. The premise of the Beam Maker laboratory is that, you know, the folks that work in the Beam lab, they don't do everything for you. They're there to help you and train you and answer questions, but it's up to you to do the work. So we do trainings to do the work, and then we do it ourselves. And so in this case, Joel exceptionally was like, I'll do a lot of it. I'll do more than I normally would. And this is a test and it will attract people to it. And I'll also be helping you out in this moment of dire need to get the piece cut out. So we cut the piece out. And it was such a long cut. It was like a 10-hour cut. And, you know, I come back a couple days later to start shop vacuuming it and seeing it because it's just under a pile of MDF dust. And when I shop vac it out, I see like, oh, you know, I had gotten rid of the holes, but somebody wanted the holes there, so they're still there, right? So suddenly I cut out the piece and there's a hole in the middle of it. And I'm like, okay, let me go back to what I'd originally planned and we'll you know, kind of claw our way back there. So there's something about the piece, like it has something that it wants done, you know, and I feel like I need to be listening to it. And now I'm in the process of trying to get there, trying to get to the point where I can start painting and I can start drawing and I can start assembling. This piece has a lot more agency than any piece I've worked on so far. So I'm going to tell you what I am planning to do, but we will see the next time we check in what happened. Because she's just got plans and I'm trying to listen as well as I possibly can and navigate them. So my plan for now is to sand her. And I love sanding my pieces. It's a part of the process nobody sees and no one really cares about, but it makes me feel really intimate with the material. And while I'm just like paying so much attention to it in this really detailed way, I feel like I find what more needs to happen. Like I learn like, oh, in this little pocket I'm sanding, I need this other pigment here, you know, or in this little pocket it needs to be glossy, not matte, or in this pocket it needs to be light absorbing black, not reflective black, you know. So I'm really excited to sand it, and I'm going to kind of be really deliberate about these cavities that it has decided need to exist despite all of our best intentions, and just see what shape those cavities want to be because they need to be kind of touched up a little bit. And I'm going to get I've jury-rigged a router for myself with a Dremel and a cutting guide. Don't do this at home. I have safety gear and we're surviving the process. I've got all my digits still, but I'm going to need to kind of sand it down, flip it over, and then kind of turn it back into a frame and make a little incision around the back so that when I lay the paper in, it's not sitting on the back of the piece, but it's resting kind of inside the piece and is a little protected so that I can put another surface on the back so that nobody can like punch through the middle of the piece and like, you know, tear it apart, you know, which is really easy to do by accident art handling or moving your work or just living. So I'm going to be getting the work ready to start priming it and getting my deep blacks down into it, soaked into the MDF. And while I'm doing that, I'm also running tests outside of the work, alongside the edge of it. I'm running these tests to see how I can work up that drawing in the middle of the paper and what kind of like quality I want it to have. And I'll be running those tests in coloring pencil with this new set of Holbein coloring pencils I just got. Every art nerd knows when you've got new art supplies, you know, it's a lot of learning, but it's really fun. So that's what I'm planning to do this week. We'll see what Voyage is planning to do.